Good evening, Patty. I believe every one of the committee members are on.
Okay. Megan, can you take the roll, please?
Oh, can we start with the?
Oh, sorry.
Yep. If we could please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now, Megan, can you take the roll?
Richard Beltz.
Here.
Rita Spinelli.
Here.
Nathan Fuller.
Here.
Patricia DeNicola.
Here.
Tina Champ.
Here.
Jonathan Kleber.
Present.
Okay. We are going to start with a presentation from PFM. They have assisted the district in the past with the bond issuances and debt obligations of the district. What they will be presenting tonight, along with RBC, Mr. Ken Phillips and Zach Willard will be presenting information in regards to potential future refinancing opportunities that will save the district debt service costs. This is just an initial presentation. There will be nothing on tonight's board agenda in regards to this presentation, and any presentation shared will be shared with the full board after the meeting. This is just the first step in sharing information in regards to potential refunding opportunities that will be available to the district, and kind of giving an idea if the market rates come into play, what the district could potentially save. So JJ, I believe Zach Willard and Ken Phillips have registered.
Yes, that is correct.
And you received the presentation?
Yes, I'll bring that up.
Okay.
Zach and Ken, if you could hear us.
Yeah, JJ, it's Zach here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is Ken. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us.
So it says my video is not working, so I hope that's okay. You can just hear both of us. Does that sound right?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'm going to pull up the presentation now.
Okay.
Let me switch screens.
So real quick, while you do that, JJ, I'll just kind of give a real brief intro. So as Patty said, this is Zach Willard from PFM. We're the district's independent municipal advisor. And so tonight we're going to kind of talk about two things. One is some short-term cash flow relief, and that's what's really in this handout. And Ken's going to walk through that. RBC prepared some different sets of numbers, and we're going to talk about those here in a moment. And then the other topic, which we're going to hit on very briefly, is the refinancing of one of your existing debt service savings. Now, that's something, for some of the board members who've been around for a few years, we've had a number of meetings over the last 3 years talking about that. There's been different times in the market where it's maybe made a little sense to investigate. And more recently with interest rates, at all-time lows, it was looking more advantageous for the district to get geared up so that, in the future, if it does make sense, that we're in kind of a position to react quickly to it. Okay, so those are kind of the two things on the agenda, but really the main focus tonight is to talk about some short-term relief for the upcoming budget years. And I'll hand it over to Ken here to walk through that.
Great. Thanks, Zach. And thank you for having us tonight. We've had the opportunity to work with Patty in the past, and we've done some really good things at previous districts for her. And also worked very closely with PFM on many, many issues. And Zach and I have done that. We have put together, Zach and I today and our teams have put together exactly what he said. It's just some things that our school districts are looking at with respect to the COVID situation that we've been going through, what that does to cash flow. We don't know yet in terms of revenues, and also to get us positioned and poised to be able to do some other refundings that may come back into play. So with that, don't hesitate to stop us as we're going through these presentations. As Patty said, there's no action tonight. This is really food for thought, but we can move fairly quickly on some things if you need to. And so if anytime during the presentation there's a question, go ahead and ask, and Zach and I'll respond. So if you can go to page 1. right? Page 1 gives you a reflection of what's happened since really March with respect to interest rates. Interest rates were on the rise through 17 and 18. The Fed was calling for increased rates through 19 and through 20. And what happened is that rates went back the other way and actually hit all-time lows probably 6 months ago. What happened in March is, as we were continuing to go down in rates, you can see by looking at any of those slides, the light blue is the municipal rate. That's what you borrow at in the marketplace. It went sky high after the whole COVID situation, and the markets were basically out of sync. This reflects the 5-year, 10-year, and 30-year municipal rate versus the treasuries. And the municipal rate, the light blue line, should always be below the dark blue line, because institutions who buy municipal debt that you've issued in the past, your debt is tax exempt. Okay, people who buy your debt do not pay taxes. So all the time in a normal world, the light blue line is lower than the dark blue line. You can see that we're not there yet. We're not back to norm. Okay. It has been now 3 months about that the light blue line's been higher. We are getting closer, and we do think that at some point in time, and why we're going through this slide is because when we look at future opportunities for the district, okay, as long as credit ratings are there and so on, we'll have an opportunity to do some, further refundings that could bring real dollar savings to you. And that's why we're showing you this slide here, just to give you a feel for what the market has done since the COVID situation. Next slide. Next slide is the gross debt service outstanding that the district has before any type of state reimbursement. You can see your various different issues. You have the 14 notes, the 2014 qualified zone academy bonds, QZABs, which were offered for federal discounts and so on. You have the 15 issue, the 15 A's, the 16 vote tech, and then the 17 QZABs. Total gross debts about $4 million, a little more than $4 million is your gross debt service, and so that's what you budget to on an annual basis, on the gross side. The next slide is the net debt service outstanding. And that takes into consideration, when you look at the bottom of the page, the state helps you because you went through the planning and construction process for construction projects. The state reimburses you a certain percentage times your aid ratio. So you can see, for example, the 14 notes have a very high reimbursable percentage, 82%, while the 15s have a 7% and so on. The net effective is called the local share. That's really your out-of-pocket true cost when it comes to taking in consideration state reimbursement. That's assuming state reimbursement is paid to you. The state has been remiss in the past when their budget issues sometimes to forego that or to delay that. But this gives you some feel that when you're going through the budget process, you put the gross debt service that we just looked at, you'll put a state and rental sinking fund receivable on the other side. And as long as the state honors their obligation, you should get some money back. In your case, roughly, say $1 million. So your rough gross debt service is $4 million. Your net debt service is $3 million. So what we're going to do before we go to the next slide, well, that's fine. We'll go to the next slide. That's fine. So what we're doing, and what a lot of school districts are looking at, or at least studying, okay, the whole concept now is to look at options that we may or may never use. And it's based off of the fact, am I going to have the same revenue stream or not have the same revenue stream? So in this particular illustration, we try not to confuse you by giving you multiple studies. This is trying to create some cash flow savings in the year 21, 22, and a little bit in 23. So you can see per the footnote number 2 that we're going to strip away some of the debt from the next 2 years from the majority of the issues. And we're going to take that debt and we're going to restructure it out later, which is basically column 10 and 11. And in doing that, you create column 13, okay, which is the net budgetary savings. So you could free up roughly $1.3 million for the next 2 years. 23 is really nothing. I mean, it's 68 grand, but it's nothing to really, balance a budget on or anything. But in doing that, what you're doing is you're taking the debt that we're pulling out of the next 2 years' budgets, throwing it in the latter end. And you can see that when you look at column 10 and 11, you can see some larger payments in the longer end. And what that does is that creates for you about $100,000 or so mismatch, and you get to that $3.2 million range. So while it is, restructuring debt always requires you to, I want to say, kick the can down the road a little bit. In the circumstances that we are living in now, this is just another arrow in the quiver with respect to what options you may have to go ahead and give yourself some debt relief if you want to. Now, we will mention that you see if you do that, your debt service goes down to $1.5 million, then $1.6 million, then basically back to $3 million. To get that debt relief, you pretty much need to retain your budget structure at $3 million because you're going to need to get back there. Okay? If you don't do that, these are one-time savings. They're cash savings. They're a shot in the arm for non-reoccurring expenses. If you don't do that, then you're going to have a really big hole by the time 2023-24 comes around. Because you're going to not only have to make up the $100,000, you're going to have to make up the 1.3 that you just saved. So this gives you some budget cash relief that may or may not be needed. Okay. Obviously, you're going to listen to your administration with respect to, what happens, but there is some way to probably give you some relief if you're really looking for it from a cash basis, a one-time savings basis. If we go to the next slide is just some recap and some, thoughts and considerations. So we recommend that the board adopt the borrowing resolution and bond purchase agreement for the refinancing of the GO bonds of 15 and 15A, as well as the restructuring portions. The 15A is really the one there where we're looking for some real savings on. If we get to the place where that light blue line gets below the dark blue line, or we get to a point where we can do some other type of structure, we can move at a moment's notice by having one master resolution in place. That's what's been done in the past, and it's something that most of our districts do, is to try to position themselves in such a way that they have really good flexibility when the markets do move. And sometimes they move at a really rapid pace, as you've seen by the ups and downs from the previous graphs. So that's sort of short and sweet, as we were asked to keep it tonight. But before we get into some of the questions you have, this is a technique that a lot of our districts have used with respect to trying to come up with some cash budget relief, realizing that it's a one and done type thing, and you sort of need to retain your current budget where it is. It does give you some cash that maybe you have some, one-time cash expenses that you can use to pay for. Kicking what we're calling the, additional debt service down the road is not that significant. It levels you off at a certain level of debt that is very manageable for you if you care and if you think you need to do this. I do think that when you look at, the last page here, it does make sense to probably go ahead and act upon some type of resolution that sort of gives you the opportunity to not only do a restructuring at the right time, but also gives you the opportunity to hit the markets with some type of refunding if there's true economic savings out there. So with that, Zach and I'll field any questions that you may have and turn it back to Patty.
Ken, the one thing that I'll just add, and I think you made this clear, but I'll say it again. The point of setting up these resolutions at some future meeting is just so that we're able to act, quicker. Some of you might remember that the timeline to go to market for a bond issue can be long. It can be as short as 6 weeks, but it can be as long as 10 weeks, just kind of what's happening in the market. By doing these resolutions ahead of time, even if we decide not to move forward with the restructuring, just gets us in a much quicker position to react should you call us and say, hey, we do want to do this. Or should we call you and say, hey, the market's looking really good. It's time to refinance that 2015 A bond issue and save a bunch of money. We can just move a lot faster if we kind of get this first step out of the way. So what questions or thoughts do you have on this?
Zach, one question on the 2015A bond obligation. Is it in 2023 or 2024, we would have the ability to refinance the entire issue at that point? Is that correct?
Yeah, so good question. So when you look at the bottom of column 5, you can see there's a date of November 15th, 2023. So that's the first possible date that we can refinance the 2015 A's. Now, what we were talking about and what Ken was going through back on that interest rate slide was, if you're to use taxable interest rates to refinance the 2015 A's, because those are so low right now, we can actually do that in today's market. We don't have to wait until 2023. And that's, a function of how low taxable interest rates are. If we decide not to do this and we kind of wait and we wait, and as we get closer to that 2023 date in November, we could then potentially use tax-exempt interest rates to refinance the debt. But we would fully expect that sometime between now and November of 23, the district will refinance that bond issue for some type of interest savings. It just kind of depends on when and how we do it is the question.
And that's one of the reasons in the recommendation page is we're also throwing in the 15s, because the 15s have a call date of November 15 of 22. So in essence, you're really not going to do anything with the 14 QZABs or the 17 QZABs because the rates are virtually nothing. But we are trying to put in position those issues that you do have some potential economic savings on, which is primarily the 15 and 15As.
Does that answer your question, Patty?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So, and I'll just say, and Zach or Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the finance committee and everybody, listening to this meeting, there are stipulations when, a municipality issues debt that they can only refund them at certain time periods because of the tax implications. However, as they explained in this presentation, right now the taxable rates are actually, are trending lower, which is why we're bringing this to committee for the committee to start thinking about. Again, there's nothing on the agenda on tonight's board meeting, but this is some good information we want to start thinking about to see if as a district we want to align ourselves to be able to take advantage of the potential opportunities that are there today and then get us prepared for the 2015 A refunding that comes up in 2023.
That's correct, Patty. The other reason for getting yourself set up is there's actually potentially pending legislation in Washington. They did away with advanced refundings with the 2017 tax code. So as of 1/1 of 2018, you can no longer advance something in terms of refunding it on the 15As. You would have to wait till November 23. Well, no one anticipated the taxable market to be where it is, basically zero because of COVID. But there's talk of bringing back those advanced refundings. So you would want to not only position yourself for potential taxable debt refundings, but also if they do have legislative changes, we want to be ready to move if we can.
And that's a good point. So, if you did move forward with one of these resolutions, it would be written in a way that we could take advantage of kind of any of these things should one kind of poke its head out as the better option versus the other.
This is Nathan Fuller. Can I just ask for clarification? So basically, are we refinancing basically the amount that we would be paying on this debt over these next 2 years? Is that really where the savings has come from by spreading out those payments over future years?
JJ, could you go to that last page again? Yeah, that one. Yeah. So good question. So as Ken was pointing out, column 13 is really the column that you're looking at here. And so very, very important, okay, to keep that same budgeted debt service going forward, and Patty will make sure to do that. But so basically you're going to be budgeting for a $3 million payment, but you're only going to be making a payment of 1.6 million. And that's where you're going to get the savings from over the 2-year period. And that's because, yes, we're going to scoop out the debt that you would be paying in the next 2 budget years to get you that cash flow relief. And then when you look down column 13 and you see all those red negative numbers, that's where we're then putting the debt. After you get those 2 years of relief, you're going to have to pay about $100,000 more back up to that $3+ million range every year. So that's the cost to doing it. So the benefit of this is you get 2 years of short-term relief to kind of hopefully get you through some of this COVID mess. And then the con of doing this is that you're going to then pay, over the life of the debt, about $100 some thousand more in the future years. So that's the trade-off.
And Nathan, what this doesn't show, okay, this is just the restructuring portion as Zach started off the presentation. This doesn't show any potential savings from doing just a straight refunding, higher rate to lower rate of the 15 and 15As. Because right now there aren't any significant savings, so we're not showing you that. However, prior to COVID, there were savings. Okay, and so there was something to, seriously take a look at. And what we're trying to do is posture ourselves that if we get that opportunity or they bring back advanced refundings or whatever, that the other shoe then falls and that you then maybe have an opportunity to do the 15 and 15As strictly for budget purposes and savings.
Okay, that makes sense.
And Nate, one thing that we talked about with Patty is, we can't see the future. We don't know how much it'll save if you do get the chance to do it. But the savings in the future, those hypothetical savings could be used to then offset kind of those red numbers in the out budget years. Okay, so you might have to pay a little bit more now, but then that future refinancing can be used to help offset the negative impact of this restructuring.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, you can digest all this, and if you think of any other questions or whatever, you can't sleep tonight and you're looking at this, just let Patty or JJ know, and we're happy to answer them over the next week or two.
And JJ, could you also email us a copy of that presentation?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
For the finance committee, if we decide we'd like to put this in front of the board at some point, we would have PFM back to again present information and another opportunity to digest it and review any questions.
Yeah, that's correct. We can move, as Ken said, we can move as slow or as fast as you want to on this. But yeah, just feel free to take a look, and we'll be ready when you need us.
Any other questions from the committee?
Nothing more for me.
Nothing from me.
Nothing from me.
Well, thank you very much for giving Zach and I the opportunity to be here, and we're here to help. And as you go through your budget deliberations, Patty knows how to get in touch with us, and we'll see where we go from here. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, take care, everyone.
Thanks again.
All right, bye-bye.
JJ, would you like to move into the budget presentation next?
Yeah, I'll have to switch the shares. I'm having trouble with the share screens.
Okay.
Let me see. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are. Okay, so for tonight's meeting, I just want to start because there's been some apparent confusion regarding fund balance, what it is, what it isn't. and what has exactly happened to the district's fund balance through the years. So what I prepared is just a snapshot and then the supporting documentation below of how fund balance has been exhausted at the school district. As of the year end June 30, 2015, the district had a fund balance of $14,270,505. By the end of June 30, 2019, the district's fund balance was only $874,438. The district exhausted over 94% of its fund balance in those 4 years. With the 1920 budget using fund balance estimated at 2.5 million, at the end of this current year, 1920, we anticipate a negative fund balance of $1,659,629. You can't have a negative fund balance. That's why it's of the utmost importance that we pass a balanced budget, or a budget ideally with a surplus, so we can start building that fund balance back up, so we can improve our credit rating to be able to take advantage of the refinancings that the market might potentially be able to provide savings to the district. So through the years, the district was using fund balance to balance budgets. And you can see down below the level at which each year fund balance decreased to balance the budgets. JJ, can you go to the next slide or the next page? So I have additional updates for our budget for 2021. We did have a couple more resignations for personnel. We were able to not fill those positions. So as of the June 8th meeting, we had a budget deficit of $1,946,671. As of today, with those personnel changes, is $1,780,029. We did, put together an option that nobody wants, I don't want to present this option, but we have, limited resources, limited revenues, and expenditures that are higher than our revenues. So we need to come up with some form of revenue generation or expenditure decreases to get us to that balanced level. If the district would do a tax increase of 1.76 mils, that would bring in approximately $580,376. That takes into account, the discount that we offer to taxpayers. Roughly 84% of our property owners do take advantage of that discount. So that is factored in to that number. The budget deficit after the tax increase up to the index would be $1,199,653. As we talked about at the last meeting, if we would eliminate regular transportation, that would be a savings of about $992,000. Elimination of certain extracurricular programs, that's not eliminating all programs, but certain programs, that would save $84,614. And then the elimination of middle school athletics would be $84,538, which would leave us at a deficit of $37,691. These estimates would be impacted if any of our revenue numbers drop off. So if the earned income tax collections drop off due to the pandemic and our revenue numbers start to drop, then our deficit is going to increase. So even if we make, expenditure decreases at this point to pass the 2021 budget, throughout the 2021 fiscal year, we're going to be closely monitoring not only expenditures, but also revenues. If revenues start to trail off and do not reach the level that we anticipate they will, then that's something that throughout the year we may need to make decisions to say our revenues are dropping off. We need to make appropriate decreases in our expenditures throughout the year to make sure we're maintaining that balanced budget.
Patty,
one other item on the tax increase. I know in past meetings we talked about potentially extending due dates for taxpayers. And there had been some bills at the Harrisburg level presenting, some extended due dates. Those bills seem to be a little bit stagnant in Harrisburg right now. So I'm not sure that anything will get done in Harrisburg as far as, extending due dates. But I do know that many districts are discussing, should they, extend due dates. That could be an option for the district as well. If, they want to give taxpayers additional time to pay their real estate taxes, we would then need to, have some sort of cash flow option to support the cash flow needs of the district should those real estate tax dollars not come in the same time frame that they had in the past. But that's an option too. We do have the option to look at that. I'm also going to propose, because we have to pass the budget by June 30th. I'm going to propose that we hold another finance committee meeting this Thursday at 6 p.m. So again, we can, discuss options and discuss how the board would like, that final budget to be presented.
This is Richard Belt speaking. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm real new to Zoom meetings, so I apologize for being technologically deficient here. But I asked several months ago if we could. I asked JJ and asked Patty if I could get a number that would a decrease in salaries that would help to balance this budget or to balance the budget, and nobody's ever gotten back to me on that. I don't see a decrease in salaries on your list of cuts. We spent millions of dollars for teachers' requests, for administration requests, millions and millions and millions of dollars, tax dollars were spent on this. Now, I've been against the spending from the very beginning when I started on the board here. And I know you don't like to revisit the past because it's not comfortable, but these teachers came out in support of the building projects, in support of the football stadium, and in support of closing the 4 schools that we had. Now, we have to ask them to help with this problem because we did a lot to help them. They have a nice new building to teach in. They have a nice new football stadium to go see their football games at. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for a little bit in return. And I think the number was around $2 million that we need to balance this budget, 1.7, 1.8 million. We could easily make that up. I don't know what the percentage pay cut would be, but 8, 10, 12%. I don't think that's too much to ask, and I'm not sure why that wasn't on your list of cuts.
Well, it's not on the list of cuts because we are actively bound by the current collective bargaining agreements. It's if the committee, the board would, like to entertain those discussions with the, unions, we can, that can definitely be done, but we are bound by the collective bargaining agreements. So this budget is based upon the costs that we are bound upon.
Any other questions from the panelists? We have several people with questions from the group.
Patty, this is Nathan. I just had one question. One thing you mentioned was the earned income tax. We should be able to get some kind of a gauge on how that's coming in because much of that's paid in advance by employers, correct?
Well, we did reach out to the collector. Based upon their numbers, they anticipated that we would maintain relatively flat EIT collections, flat for 1920 going into 2021, which is how we have that number budgeted flat. That's not to say if there's another outbreak in the fall or another time of the year that our EIT collections might fall off. That's my caution. Based upon the data that they could provide, they see our district maintaining relatively flat. So that's what we budgeted. We continued to budget what we normally would budget for those income taxes.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, we'll go to Miss Bose.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I don't know what to say here, but your contract is up on June 30th of this year as far as the teachers go.
That is incorrect. Our contract goes until
August
the end of
31st.
August.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm not looking at it. Yeah, August 31st. While cutting salaries is not necessarily something you want to do. We've heard a lot on social media about cutting middle school band, etc., and everything else. So you're still going to have a deficit. I'm not looking at that slide now because it's not up. If you cut what you had proposed cutting, still 37,691. What elimination, what certain extracurricular programs are you looking at cutting?
JJ, can you speak to those? And can you speak to the
The middle
concerns
school.
about the music program that it still will be offered as far as classes go?
Yes, we are still looking to offer the middle school program. What it is we're trying to work to figure out a schedule. Of course, with the new guidelines and everything, everybody's schedule is just totally different. So as part of our plan, that'll be, need to be incorporated. But as far as eliminating middle school band, that has never been a discussion. So I'm not familiar with where that conversation had. We actually have a meeting set up, I believe, first week in July with the band to try and make it so we can offer both band and chorus at the middle to continue offering them. But it will definitely look different with the guidelines. But as far as the middle school.
Well, still, what are the certain extracurricular programs you're looking at cutting to save $84,614?
And I don't have my list.
Hold on, let me see if I can quickly pull it up.
This is a share here. I can't move my screen.
All right. I think that should be known. The other question I have is if you cut the regular busing that we don't have to provide, what kind of a mess is that going to cause for drop off and pickup?
That has been discussions that we're looking at too. We know we're going to have increased drop off and pickup just because of the pandemic that we're in right now. So we are actually looking at staggered start times in different drop off and pickup locations throughout the buildings. Options of doing things by alphabet based on last name and where they could be dropped off and picked up. So we are planning for that even if we do have transportation. We are planning on a number of increases for parents who are going to be driving their children to school.
Right, but if we do provide transportation for the upcoming year, how is that going to affect the budget? Because it would be, with social distancing, it would be a lot more buses and a lot more drivers.
Even with half our staff, we would need, with 12 students on a bus, we would need 100 runs to get half our student body here. So you are correct.
And I've talked to a lot of people that are considering going to cyber school. How is that going to affect our budget?
I think once we get our information out, we can, see where we're at with it. Our hope is that that's not the case, that, we could develop an educational plan that'll actually encourage people to come back to us from cyber school with some of this virtual learning, which will look totally different than what it has, because we have to prepare for students who do not wish to come back into the building. And it is still our requirement to educate, even if they choose not to go to cyber school, we are still required to offer them in education. So that is part of our plan development.
Okay,
But Barb, to your question, if more students would enroll in charter schools, our expenditures would go up and we have no control over that.
right, I get that. That's a big concern of mine. Now, someone mentioned a while back that there is a limit to how many kids can enroll in LAVA. Is that the case?
No, but just for clarification, LAVA is an expense. LAVA is not, even though it's our virtual, we still spend $4,500 a student for that program.
It's still better than
Yes, absolutely.
studying at other cyber schools.
Yes.
The other question I had, and I was hoping to ask PFM, it looks like from what they presented, it would be a new bond issue.
It would be, Barb. In essence, you create a new bond issue to pay off the debt service payments that they had highlighted in those 2.5 years.
Right, I get that. And I do remember seeing, I think it was in 2040, we would have to pay an extra $641,000 because that
Correct.
would be the balloon payment for the new bond issue.
Correct.
My question for them is, given our bond rating has decreased, I believe, twice, even though we're still A.
And I will caution that our bond rating will probably drop again.
What would the costs as far as bond insurance, et cetera, be for those bond issues? If should you decide to go that way, I think those are questions that need to be asked. I just don't see personally, and I understand the position you're in, but I don't see where going into further debt really helps anything. Now, I was looking at the latest expenditure report, and there's a lot of areas that are way over budget. And I think I would like to see why, personally, but I certainly think the board should be looking at that. Why are we over budget in the?
There are a number of budget transfers that will be presented to the board. And budget transfers happen when you budget in one line item, like for instance, you were buying for a regular ed student a bunch of supplies, but now that need is no longer there, but you had an increased need for special education supplies. So you have to move it from one function to another. Okay. So at the closeout of a year, in years past, the district never did this, but it's something the district should do. When you get to the end of your fiscal year, you align your budget, you're allowed to do budget revisions, move, exact dollars from one function to another and make those changes. Those are things you will see as we start closing out the 1920 year.
Okay, I mean, I'm looking at purchase professional and tech, the regular programs, and it's over budget by $125,000.
Barb, if you send an email and give us an opportunity to look at the line items that you're talking about.
I'll send you my highlighted thing. The other thing, and I've never seen this on any of the other ones, we don't budget for personnel salaries for federally funded regular programs.
We do those as part of journal entries at the end of the year when we close out the grants. They're budgeted in the 1100 series. But then they roll down to the 1190 series. So It's still in the 1100 base, but then when we close out the grant, we do journal entries at the end of the year because our system doesn't charge out properly to the federal grants. Okay. We do the journal entries to move it to, you'll see it to the 1190.
Right.
And then you'll see on the AFR, the salaries reported in the federal expenditure column.
Okay, so it's the software program.
The software program is not ideal, in my opinion, for handling the grant reporting and the grant expenditures, because it will charge out, without overcomplicating it, it will charge out every cost, like every employment tax cost and every PSERS cost. But for grant purposes, we can't charge every cost to the grant, because some of those costs get reimbursed to us by the state. So we can't charge that out to the grant. It doesn't effectively allow us to properly charge. So the most efficient way is to track it, through the grant process and then do the journal entries at year end.
Okay, and I do know that we get grants for that, and that mostly covers the cost. Maybe
Correct,
not.
yeah.
The other thing I noticed was that we're paying PSERS for security and safety. Now, my question is, we have 2 part-time police officers. Is there something else that we're paying PSERS cost on? Because I noticed, I believe it was in the AFR as well. Do we have another employee on which we pay PSERS?
We pay PSERS on every qualified employee, and our security officers are qualified for PSERS participation.
Even as part-timers?
Correct.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Correct. Once they reach the hours of service, they're qualified.
Okay.
Now that could change in the future. If, hours drop, then that could change. But as of this point, we've been notified by PSERS that they are eligible to participate, and thus we're required to withhold.
Okay, and when does the grant stop for our officers?
Well, it's expected to continue for 2021.
Okay.
Going
But
forward,
at a reduced rate, because I know it went down.
it did, and what we've discussed is cutting back the hours to match the grant. So in years past, even in the initial years, the cost of the grant didn't fully cover those positions.
Okay.
So we have discussed curtailing some hours in order to have the grant fully support those 2 positions. As far as if it'll go away, I don't anticipate from, a political level at Harrisburg that those safety and security grants will go away. But again, I don't, it could happen. I just don't anticipate that they will cut those dollars any more than they already have.
Okay, right, and nobody's psychic, so Harrisburg does what Harrisburg wants.
Yeah.
Is it at a reduced rate for this upcoming year over what it was reduced for last year?
I'd have to look at that. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I believe this year, Patty, I believe it was 40,000. I don't want to speak, but I believe it was 40,000.
I think it maintained relatively flat, but I'd have to double check that.
Okay, that would be good to know. All right, thank you.
You have a Tom L. Hello, Tom.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. Elimination of regular transportation, $992,810. First question is, has the finance committee or anybody looked at possibly changing busing companies to get a better rate, like some other districts did in our area? And I guess that might not really even be too good of a question, because it's still going to leave us with a deficit. It looks to me like we still have $37,000 of deficit at the bottom. But just to be clear, when you say elimination of regular transportation, you're talking about every single person dropping their kid off at school and picking them up. Is that correct?
We still will be required by law to transport non-public students, so students who go to other schools but still will live within our boundaries. And we are also required, based upon students' individual IEP plans, they may have transportation in there too. So there will be some students that we still by law will be required.
Okay, but the vast majority of the kids, no matter where they live in the district, are going to have to be dropped off by the parents and picked up by the parents.
That would be, if we did not have transportation, that would be a possibility. And there's also a possibility if the individual parents would want to, work with their current bus contract provider, that may be an option for them. But at this recommendation, that would be elimination of all regular transportation. So that is correct.
It's a major hardship on everybody, guys. You got to do something better. Got to do something better. That's all I have.
Thank you.
JJ, do you want to talk through though your discussions with the county as far as the social distancing required?
Yeah, I think, that's also part of it too, is at this point, the guidelines for transportation is the 6 feet of social distancing and no more than 12 individuals on a bus. I mean, you can look and see how a lot of, schools are saying that's very difficult. But even as recently as today, we work with our emergency management groups, and that 12 individuals, even if half our students came at say 1,200 students, we would need 100 trips for those students to get here. And then also, we're not sure how that would look as far as, scheduling start times too, because it wouldn't be able to happen. I mean, currently right now we have about 20 bus runs that we do in the morning and for secondary and elementary students, and then again in the evening. So that would be multiplied immensely as well. So we're still having those type of discussions of exactly what that looks like. Transportation is a big discussion item as we look to possibly reopen school here in the upcoming year. I have Mr.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just want to backtrack to Barbara's one question about if there was a specific list of sports, and if so, well, I know there is. If so, whose discretion was it to pick and choose? And if we were going to eliminate certain sports, what's the sense of picking and choosing? Well, we could just eliminate all of them or go to a pay-to-play type situation like other districts do. Secondly, I know Barbara's other question about, Mr. Beltz's comment about teachers' pay and reduction for all the things that they were lobbying for in the past few years, including the administration, to be honest. Now, the new contract stuff, we shouldn't just look at our problem now. With the new contract coming up, it would behoove us to look for savings moving forward in certain aspects as well. I know it's water over the dam with the current contract, but we really should be looking at savings and cuts perhaps and or freezes for future years while we have the ball in our court with the contract. So if you can just circle back to the couple questions that Barbara had, so there's clarity, if you can.
At the middle school level, that again, we're talking about all athletics at the middle school, all spring and winter athletics at the middle school level. So that's where that is. Also, advisors for weight training. A lot of it, is there's individuals who supervise the weight room. We wouldn't have that open, and with the guidelines, I'm not sure how we would control some of that at this point anyway. So that is also part of it as well.
What, in high school?
I don't have that. I have to go back and look. We're looking for Thursday. We will have that list for Thursday's meeting. I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, so then
these are options that we're presenting with the board to help with the deficit.
So my question is, who's picking and choosing the specific sports?
Well, the specific sports are just middle school, and it would be all middle school.
No. You said about high school, eliminating certain high school sports.
No sports. We're looking at the extra type curricular activities.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah,
that's great news.
Not high school at this point with this. All
right, perfect. Thank you.
Ms. Bowman?
Good evening. Thank you. In your 2021 budget, and working on the contract with the teachers, as Mr. Belt and Mr. Kemmer alluded to, is there talk of a cost of living adjustment to be able to come up with the $42,513 expenditures? Or is there no discussion and that's not even part of the budget?
Well, Gloria, as you know, any discussions regarding contract negotiations are not public until a contract would be presented.
Well, then my question is, how can you come up with the expenditures with not at least having a general figure in your head? That's all. I mean, and I know that's confidential. So, that's my question. My other question is the AFR reports for the last several years. The numbers showed the balance still being in a positive. So I don't know where the discrepancy of those expenditures happened over the years, other than I know the $6 million in 15-16, I'm sure was the all-purpose stadium, which was already in the planning stages. Can you clarify that for me, please?
Gloria, with all due respect, I have not been here, but only just over a year. So as far as what I can show you is what the historical numbers, what they were, and I can show you the rapid decline in fund balance. As far as the individual items, I'm trying to get the district moving forward and through the financial struggle that it's in. I don't know what happened over the last, those 4 or 5 years that I showed you. I just see a rapid decline in the fund balance. Not being at the district and not building the budgets of those years, I don't know where the budget might not have aligned with the actual spending.
Okay, I'm just curious if that will be shown in the audit report, but I don't understand why the AFR report, though, that was filed even last year still showed a positive fund balance.
Because as of the end, as shown on the graph,
right?
Can you back up?
Yeah.
One page.
One time. Thank you.
As of the end of 18-19, the district had a positive fund balance of $874,000. With the expected use of fund balance for the 19-20 year, we will end with a negative fund balance of $1,600,000. Between the 17-18 year and the 18-19 year, the fund balance went from 4.2 million down to 874,000.
I see that. Okay, thank you. And my question with the transportation, I don't know how you're planning to bring the kids back, but how will that down the road affect our relationship with our bus company, who has been absolutely wonderful over the years?
That is, part of our discussion too, is there is an opportunity for, our bus company not to be able to work with us, moving down the road, because you may have to go and, look for other districts to transport. I mean, our hope is that doesn't happen, but I mean, that is a possibility, Lord.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bradley? Hello, Mr. Bradley.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to be quick because you guys got to go to a board meeting, and it's obvious that you didn't look at the audit report yet. Did you look at that yet, Nathan? I'm talking to you specifically. Did you see the audit report, Nathan? No, you're not going to answer. Let me just move on, and then you guys can get to the real meeting where people actually have a right to speak. So one of the things I want to make a very obvious comment to is, on this budget, you have 3 budgets. The final, which was occurred in June, the January, which is called the preliminary, and now you got the proposed. And in that period of time, the salaries, the payroll, the actual expenditures of this district under the 1100 that Patty was talking about went from 18.5, 18.9 to over $19 million. The same number moved, and that's way above the $17 million number for the instruction. So Mr. Belts is correct. These people are obstructing information from this board. They're obstructing how the budget is created. People that don't have a clue, like Rita, that says the numbers create the budget, is just a mess when it comes to the responsibility of this board to prepare the budget. Let's move on to the board meeting. Have a nice day, people. You're just lying to these people. You're trying to get their money from them. You're scaring them about buses. You're scaring them about sports. All you have to do is not give $1 million+ raise within a budget year that you didn't even negotiate the budget yet. I find you farcical at best. Stop lying to the people. Thank you.
Okay, I have a Miss Zellers, I believe, or
Mr.
Zell. I'm sorry, Mr. I couldn't see if that works.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear it?
Yes.
Yes.
I was just curious about the whole middle school cut that you were making with the music program, and what that's going to look like next year for the multitude of students that it's going to really drastically affect.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure where the cut for the music program, the misunderstanding came from. We are looking to offer both band and chorus. I know the offerings may look different just because of the requirements and the guidelines and CDCs, but I know we are working to allow that to still continue, and we're also looking to work with them to find ways to make sure that all the students can get access to it if they want at some point during the day.
Am I correct to say that Mrs. Laura Welke, I don't know how it is, like her position is not being filled? So that Mrs. Hudlow will be in charge of it all?
As part of this budget that we're preparing, there is no retirements being replaced throughout the district. Any retirement, whether it be teacher, support, or administration, is not being replaced as part of this budget.
I'm also curious, as into like complete respect to the board and everything, how many of them actually have like backgrounds in education where they know how much work a teacher puts into the actual teaching and planning and preparing for a class? No one? Okay. Well, I'm just saying, as an educator myself in another district, and also one who has been through a graduate of Lehighton School District, and the amount of work and effort that your music teachers put into the programs and everything that you do, you are doing a disservice to Mrs. Hudlow and those students, because she puts on such a good performance, teaches those students so well, and then to have her do double what her job was the past how many years she's taught for you faithfully is absolutely atrocious to you guys to do that to her. I understand that you have a deficit. I don't understand how you go from $14 million 5 years ago to negative $2 million in 1 year and in 5 years. That is nothing the teachers have done. And there was talk about how they supported the new building and the new stadium. That's great. But ultimately, that was the board's decision, not the teachers. So to place that on the teachers is absolutely rude. Nothing of them had any say in any of that. The board makes the final decision. So they are the ones responsible for the $17 million that they spent the past how many years that was in that budget. I would really hope the state steps in and looks at and audits this budget to see where this money goes, because I am so devastated that this is happening. Music changed my life, and Mrs. Hudlow and Mr. Perkins when he was there, and Mr. Buffington and Mrs. Welke, all of them have, I look up to all of them because of what they have done in my life. Because of these programs and because of what you're doing, I'm able to be standing here today as a human being with a family successful in this world, with going for being a doctoral candidate in the fall, because of those people and because of those programs. So I'm ashamed of what the board's decision has, what these decisions and what you're doing with this. Absolutely ashamed. So I really challenge the board and the financial committee to really look for a plan that does not dissolve any of those positions in the music program specifically. I know when I was in school, the music program was something to be proud of, more than the sports, more than anything else. The Indian Pride Marching Band supports this school through everything, all the time. And to do this to them it's disgusting.
Okay, thank you. I believe we do have one more individual. We'll see if maybe not. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Dasha Zelrick. My question is will you be presenting us a list of the extracurricular activities that are currently being considered of being eliminated? Will that be at Thursday's meeting, or do you have a list now?
Yes, we will have that for Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
We will have that. Yes. Okay. At this time, I know we have our board meeting scheduled for 7. We have no other individuals requesting to speak.
Is the committee okay with having another finance committee on Thursday at 6 o'clock?
It's fine with me. This is Rita.
Fine with me also.
Mr. Belts, is that okay? This one, Mr. Belts? All right. Any other questions from the panelists?
No.
Nothing more from me either.
We just need the motion to adjourn to move to our next meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Do you have a second from one of the panelists?
Second.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Mr. Belt said a second. Okay, thank you very much.